Hi guys, it's the Forgetful Scholar. Let's chat about books. So this week I got two books. The first one, so this week it is I Don't Need Luck, I Have Science, and the other one, Socially Awkward, Indifferent, and Strange. Okay, so the first one is MM, historical, paranormal, yeah, and an author we all love on this channel. This is Guardian Spirits, a spirit book 3 by Jordan L. Hawk, and this is I Don't Need Luck, I Have Science, which is just sums up the main character of Henry like perfectly, just perfectly. So this book is a 5 stars, and it kind of seems like the end of this book series. So if so, then the whole thing's a 5 stars for me. Oh, so good. And I don't know what is going on with my hair, but whatever. Anyway, so this follows Vincent, who is a very powerful medium, and Henry, who is a scientist. And in this world, it's like the early 1900s with the spiritual movement. And in this world, ghosts are established fact, and mediums and psychics are considered like a work for, like they're a work job. Like it's an actual thing. It's not, people don't assume they're charlatans. Even though there are charlatans in it, they don't assume they are. Now in this one, Lizzie and Vincent, who trained together and basically were like foster siblings, are trying to come to grips with their mentor, Dunn, and how he betrayed, like keeping secrets from them and betraying them, and how his mentor, best friend tried to kill them. Like they're trying to come to grips with it. So they're a little consumed with finding the truth, right? So Henry was like, hey, look at this advert in the paper. They're looking for different types of psychics to go to this haunted orphanage to kind of work at cooperation. And Henry's like, this will get their mind off of it. But no. No, it all ties into Dunn and Dunn's best friend and this machine that they wanted to work because they would bring paradise on Earth. So they go to, so Thorpe is the guy that's putting it on, a very rich guy. And you know, in the last video when I talked about the second book in the series, I was like, oh, I hope Lizzie gets like a romance and a happy ever after. So a little bit of spoilers, in this one, Lizzie does get a romance and a happily ever after that I'm really happy for her. She deserves it. It was super cute. And I loved how it was done because, you know, she is a secondary character. So I loved how it was done through Vincent or Henry's eyes because it's their POV. So the mystery of what their mentor was planning to do deepens. Apparently that orphanage was the orphanage the mentor was from, but he wasn't an orphan. He was the child of the owners and runners of the orphanage. And they feel even more betrayed because they thought he was an orphan. Like he never like told them the truth. It just feels like everything's a lie, right? And see, in the first book, why Henry hated mediums and things like that. There was a charlatan that when he was like 16, seduced him and took all his family's wealth, and his mother died of I think the flu or something like that, in a pauper house because of it. And that guy is part of this kind of collaboration. And immediately Harry wants to be like, he's a charlatan, you know, to Thorpe. But Isaac, who's the bad guy, who stole Harry's money and manipulated him to having sex when he was a minor, basically alludes that him and Thorpe are good friends, and, you know, the Thorpe wouldn't believe him. So Henry used to people not believing him, except Jo, his biracial niece that he's basically raised as a daughter. Vincent and Lizzie, pretty much the rest of the world never believes Henry. So, you know. I love Vincent and Henry's relationship. It's super strong. There's no like petty nonsense going on, no fight. I love how this author does that. Like the beginning of the series, of course, there's growing pains in these relationships, but when they're solid, you know? And still the books are so interesting because the storylines are so interesting. The plot lines are so interesting. So it keeps you engaged because there's no like romantic drama going on, but there's so much drama going on around them and that they have to solve and fix and collaborate to undo. So that's great. So they're not sure if they could trust Thorpe, which is understandable. They don't really know him. And, you know, to be fair, Thorpe, you know, doesn't trust them all that much either because they just met. They're strangers, whatever. So it turns out this machine, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because, oh boy. No. So this machine basically the orphanage was run by the headmistress who had a spirit guide named Zabat who told her where to build it, what to do, and how to build the orphanage, and how to build the machine. Already my spider senses who've read a lot of mysteries are like red sign, warning bells are going off, what's going on? And Henry's like, oh, this mountain is made out of certain crystals, so I think that enhances the psychic abilities. Because again, the descriptions of the ghosts and how they interact are like so cool. It sort of reminds me a little bit of like Silent Hill-ish. Like I was like, oh, that's really spooky. I like it. The whole time I wanted Isaac to die a horrible death because, you know, bloodthirsty. So I was satisfied with that, with his ending. It was a really sweet, touching scene with Henry and his father, Albert, who passed away, I think like a while ago, like 10 years ago or something like that. So there was a really touching like closure scene there that I was like, oh, that's so sweet, you know? So basically the matron of this orphanage, it started to sound more and more like she was a cult leader. Like it really, it did. She basically, the only windows in this orphanage faced the mountainside, so they had no natural light. It was just lanterns and the light bouncing off of the crystals. They drank water that was basically infused with the crystals. So basically, Henry's like, oh man, these kids were basically drugged to be really strong psychically because it's an orphanage, you know. Sorry, every time I try to film these videos, my dog's like, ooh, now it's time to do stuff I'm not supposed to do. So, all right, anyway. And you find out the malevolent ghost that possessed Vincent on the first book that killed Don. You find out all about that. And conveniently, there's a manifesto of Dunn's in the secret chamber by the crazy machine that Zabat had built that explains Dunn's reasoning and gives Lizzie and Vincent closure, in a sense. The machine basically, like, you could kill somebody and then they come back to life. And already I was like, nope. And so many of them, nope. So many of the people in the group wanted to do it because they lost loved ones or they have guilt about someone they love passing. So they're all, you know, very focused on that. Henry's sort of the only one that was like, no, this ain't good. This is bad. This is bad stuff. Like when I was reading it, I was like, is Henry the only one that watches horror movies and knows this is bad stuff? But, you know, he keeps he made his objections and he was outvoted, and he keeps his counsel to himself because he realized how important it is for Vincent. Oh, that's right. Lizzie, too, was like, this ain't right. No. So, of course, Lizzie, the voice of reason. I love her character so much. So, and Lizzie, at first, I thought it was just going to be another reskin of Christina from the Wyborn and Griffin books, but it wasn't. I was kind of looking for the similarities, and it was fantastic how, no, you know, there's no, they're just a reskin of this character. That's what I really, really love about this author. They're able to create these dynamic and rich and deep characters and not cannibalize past characters they wrote to do it. So that was really good. And I like how Lizzie's, the fact that she's transgender woman wasn't really her character. Like, it's not her personality trait, which I was really, really happy about. Because a lot of times that happens. But this character, no, she was rich and full all on her own. You know, that was just like a bump in the first book. And that was it. You know what I mean? So I like that. So this machine brings people back from the dead. Are you guys like, spaghetti too? Yeah. So that turns out to be like this demon from the other side, like really powerful and everything like that. And they defeat him, happily ending. And like, I closed the book and I was like, wait a minute. They did it to me again. This author, like they make these worlds where these other crazy powerful monsters, and the only way the mortals can defeat them is literally with the Care Bear stare. Okay, it's literally like the power of love and friendship. Care Bear stare, like, and every time I don't realize it until the book's over. You know what I mean? And every time I'm like, you know what? I still liked it. I was still satisfied with it. I'm not angry that they use like the power of love and friendship to defeat this monster. Somehow this author is able to make it seem like, yeah, obviously that's the only thing you could do. Yeah, totally. Like, it's fantastic. I love that. It's great. Oh my God. The whole series is great. You get a good closing kind of epilogue. You know, so you see where Vincent and Henry are a couple months later, where Lizzie and her newlywed husband are later, and Jo, she's gone to Europe to go to college. And like, between us, I would love a book series about Jo and her experience as like a biracial, half black, half white woman in college. And you know, I would read the hell out of it. I'm just saying. Okay. So this book was great. I had a great time. I'm kind of like, I'm always a little bummed when this author series is over, because I'm like, oh, okay, no, all right, I'll go read another. It's fine. So the next one is Socially Awkward, Indifferent, and Strange. So this one is a contemporary FM single mom slice of life kind of thing. And it's called Hawk, Men of Bird's Eye, Book 1 by Kate Savage. Now, because of the USA Today best-selling author, I was like nervous because I have not had good luck with them at all. Like at all. Okay. This one. Okay. So this one, I would put it probably about 2-star. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but there were some things that bothered me too much to give it a 3-star. Now, I will say, off the bat, slice of life contemporary stories, not really my jam. I realized I tend to be a little bit disappointed with them. The single mom aspect, what got me like, oh, I want to read this, you know, because I want a good single mom book. It was okay. Ava, so the main characters, let me start with that. The male, his name is Hawk, and he's a tattoo artist who appears to everybody very indifferent and strange. He's just very socially awkward, which I like that characterization. Like, he's covered with tattoos, and he's like 6'4", and he's got blue eyes and black hair, and he kind of looks like I don't know. Not me, but a lot of people would be like, oh, he's probably like a, you know, hooligan, bad dude, whatever. But like, I liked how he looked like a badass, but he was socially awkward. I like that. Cause like I have a bunch of tattoos myself, so I don't equate tattoos with badassness personally, but okay. The mother, the romantic interest, her name is Drew. And her daughter Ava is 8. Okay, Ava, I liked. I loved how Hawk and Ava, they're both artists, because Ava's always drawing, so they had their own connection and their own friendship, and they had a relationship, a really wholesome relationship outside of the mom and his relationship, because I like that. I don't like when kids are sort of just like a set piece when it comes to this, or like they're away at boarding school or something, you know what I mean? I like that Ava was involved in the book throughout, I did like how the author had Drew kind of restructure her life around Ava's, Ava going to school, like stuff like that. That felt very organic. And it's supposed to be like a romantic comedy. And comedy is very subjective. And I didn't take points off just because I didn't get the jokes, because that's not right. Just because I don't find something funny, you might find hilarious and vice versa. So I didn't take a star off for that. It's just I didn't find the jokes funny personally. But that doesn't mean you won't. You know what I mean? It switches POVs, but it's first person POVs, which I hate. I hate so much. Because for me, it feels like I'm reading a diary entry or the character's telling me what happened. So it feels like automatically telling, not showing. And I feel like the author has to work twice as hard to do the show, not tell rule. So for me, I didn't like that. Okay, if you don't care either way, cool. You know what I mean? Drew was I found her boring and one-dimensional. And there's so many incidents where it could have gone a little bit more, just a little bit more to make her interesting and have depth to her and stuff like that. So, again, this is slice of life, not my thing. But she had a surprise divorce. The only man she was in a relationship dumped her. They made a point and said he was a lawyer, so she got screwed. Okay. I think lawyers get a bad rap a lot of times, but whatever. And he's kind of the typical ex-husband, doesn't want anything to do with the daughter, blah, blah, blah. I think ex-husbands could be a lot more complicated than that with stories. To make them a little bit more realistic. I mean, I'm not saying this doesn't happen, but when it's written in a book, it just kind of seems a little lazy, Anyway, so she moves to a new town, and the tattoo parlor, which is called Bird's Eye, is hiring, and it's in walking distance because she doesn't have a car, and apparently public transit just doesn't exist for her, even though Ava has to take a bunch of buses to go to school, and a bunch of buses to come home, and her mom has a whole, couple paragraphs worrying about that, which is fair, but Ava's good, Anyway, so she gets a job at the tattoo parlor, kind of front desk, and then she becomes floor manager or something like that, which is fine, which is cool. Hawk, even though he looks really scary and intimidating, is very socially awkward. So once his best friend, Will, who's a female, who I really, really liked her character. I think the second book is about her, so I might check it out. Points out that Ava can't stay in the back bench. And he's like, well, minors aren't allowed in the shop. And she's like, yeah, figure something out. So it's kind of it's not that he doesn't care. It's that there's he's just socially awkward. He doesn't pick up on social cues, But when it's pointed out to him by someone he trusts, he's like, oh, okay. And he's definitely a fix-it type of personality type. So, he's like, hey, Ava can stay in my apartment upstairs, maybe, take care of the dog, things like that. So it works out like that. And I did like that Drew started to fall for him because of how kind he was to Ava. I feel like that's a real thing. What drove me nuts about Drew is that when I think they got to, I feel the pacing was a little off. So they got together kind of right away, which is fine. But when that happened, I'm like, oh, there's going to be a bunch of breakups, isn't there? Because it just happened too early. I think if the author took a little more time and had a little bit more conflict before they got together, I think the timing would have worked a little bit better. So they got together, and then she freaks out, which is fair. She's just had a rough divorce, you know what I mean? Trust issues, fine. She breaks it off with him. Now, the thing that drove me nuts is that in her POV, she knows she's a coward and she panicked, but then there's no resolution. I would have loved in her internal thoughts if she worked through some of her issues as why she bounced and how that's not fair, and kind of work through that. But it was just a paragraph or two away from doing that. So I felt very unsatisfied with that. And in Hawk's POV, we get how much he misses her, a lot. And we don't get how much she misses him from hers, which gave this whole book a very one-sided, he likes her more than she likes him kind of feel, and that doesn't resolve itself. For me, it continuously felt like that. And then they get back together, and then she freaks out again, and again there's no internal resolution, and that thread's kind of dropped, like just left. And I was like, okay, because there's no resolution, there's no like, you know, I can't believe I took the cowards way out. Like, she calls herself all those things, but she doesn't like go forward into fixing them herself, you know? And again, I was like, oh, okay. And the third act conflict, of course the ex-husband shows up. I was like, of course he did. And of course he's like the typical evil lawyer, you know, overweight, not very attractive, kind of an asshole, arrogant. I was like, okay. I felt like this is just very much like you picked number 2 of the bad guy handbook for romance novels and just placed him in. And again, she breaks up with Hawk. And again, we get on his side how much he misses her and how much this sucks. On her side, not so much. Not so much. There is a happy ending, a happy resolution, a happily ever after, and I do like that. But it just felt one-sided. It felt like Hawk was more like cared about Drew more than Drew cared about Hawk. And we're in their personal POV, so to feel that is kind of rough. I just feel like if they got together later, like if she had her freak out about having a crush on her boss, instead of, you know, them getting into a relationship so soon in the book, I think a lot of these things could have resolved itself before, and then you could have had the big third act conflict with the ex-husband showing up as the big conflict, you know, and that could have been worked on a little more in depth on, you know, it's not fair to put Hawk and her ex-husband in the same category. They're completely different people, you know. Oh, I miss Hawk. Like even like a sentence like, oh, I miss Hawk so much would have satisfied me at that point, but that wasn't there. So that was a bit of a disappointment. And it's not like I didn't like the book. I liked the ending. I liked Hawk that like, they did make this intimidating guy very socially awkward. I thought that was endearing. You know, and like Ava was sweet. And I feel like Drew was almost there. Like almost there. If there was just a couple of more paragraphs here and there where she resolved her own internal freakouts, it would have been perfect. It would have been good. And if they staggered the pace of the relationship a little bit more, I think it would have felt more satisfying when they got together, because you weren't in it with them. Like you didn't like, it wasn't enough time for you to be like, oh, I really hope they get together. Oh, they gotta get together. They're so good for each other. Like there was none of that. You know what I mean? And I think if the author just held up a little bit more with putting them together, I think the audience would have been really, I know I would have been really rooting for them. So, and again, maybe I'm being a little harsh because like slice of love isn't really my thing, but there was a lot of good points in this, and I just feel like a little more tweaking and it would have been really good. So, and side note, like he kept getting hit on a lot, and like when he's like doing the tattooing and stuff like that, and like I'm sure that happens, but I have a handful of tattoos, and like I've never once thought to hit on my tattoo artist, and some of them are really gorgeous. I don't know. It's like I never hit on like waiters or bartenders either. It's like they're at work. Don't bother people when they're at work. You know what I mean? I don't know. That just made me feel like really like skeezed out for Hawk. I think that's also why you root for him so much. At least I did. Because I'm like, oh, you're at work. They should not be doing this to you when you're at work. Gross. You know? All right. I think I'm done. Okay. So I don't want too much time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.